Hello, my name is Emma, and in today's video, we are going to talk about different English words related to housework. Housework is a very important word in English because all of us in some way do housework. So today I'm going to explain what housework is. I'm going to talk about what homework is because these words are often confused. And we're going to talk about some common words and expressions related to housework. So to get started, let's do a comparison. I have here two words, homework, housework. For many students or learners of English, they confuse these words, but these words have very different meanings. Homework is schoolwork that you do at home. So usually with homework, your teacher will give you homework. So the teacher will tell you, do this math problem at home. So that's an example of homework. When I was a child, I hated getting homework. Now this is very different from the word housework. Housework actually has to do with cleaning our house. So there's a lot of different words that are associated with housework. So for example, doing the dishes is a type of housework. Doing the laundry is housework. Vacuuming the floors is housework. Dusting is housework. So you get my meaning. Housework is the umbrella term that covers all these different tasks we do when we clean our house. Every Sunday, I do housework. And I know a lot of you probably do housework on the weekends as well. So housework is another way to say clean the house. Okay, so what verb goes with housework? And what verb goes with homework? I have here underlined the word do. I do my homework. Similarly, we use the verb do with housework. I do my housework. Every Sunday, I do housework. My mom does housework every day. My father helps my mom with the housework. So again, the verb you want to use with housework is not make, it's not practice, it's the verb do. So now let's look at some examples of housework and some very common words we use when talking about housework. Okay, so we've been talking about housework. And again, those are the different types of activities you do inside the house to clean your house. For a moment, I just wanted to talk about another very important word that is related, but has a bit of a different meaning. And that is the word errand. So in English, we often talk about errands. What are errands? Errands are small tasks or jobs we do outside of the house to help us in our daily life. So I'll give you some examples. If you go to the bank to pay some bills, that's an example of an errand. If you go to the gas station and get gas for your car, that's an errand. If you go to the dry cleaners and get your laundry done at the dry cleaners, that's an errand. Maybe you ripped your pants and you needed somebody to sew it for you. So, you go to a tailor. That's an example of an errand. Some types of shopping. The shopping you do that's not fun, that's an example of an errand. So maybe grocery shopping, or if you have to go to a hardware store to buy something for the house. Those are all examples of errands. So we use this a lot in English. When you ask somebody, oh, what are you doing today? You might hear the response, I'm running errands. So the errand is the task or the job you're doing. And the verb that goes with this is the verb run. I run errands. So I told you, usually on Sundays, I do housework. On Sundays, I also run errands. That's the day I go to the bank. That's the day I do things outside the house to prepare my house or to prepare myself for the week ahead. So another thing I wanted to talk about is a mistake I hear a lot of students making. So this has to do with housework. A lot of the times, one thing we do in the home is we cook. So you might hear the verb, I cook. I cook dinner. I made dinner. So you might hear that. So cook is a verb. We can also use this to talk about a person. You might say, I am a good cook. This means I'm good at cooking. So a cook can be a person. It can also be an action. In English, it's possible to say, the cook cooks. Isn't English a fun language? So one mistake I often hear students make is they add ER when they're talking about a person who cooks. This is incorrect. So the word cooker, we don't use in this way. Okay, so a cook can be a person and it can be an action. The reason I'm telling you this is because cooking, running errands, and housework are all very common things that we do on weekends. We often do these tasks together. So now let's look at some more words we use when talking about housework and related topics. Okay, so we've been talking a lot about housework, running errands, different things related to housework. So now what I wanted to do is talk about some very specific activities we do in the house. And I'm also going to talk about what verbs we use with these activities. So doing the dishes is a type of housework. Now, I want you to notice the verb I'm using here, do. You can say wash the dishes. That's okay. Or you can say do the dishes. Both of these are possible. So you might say, every night I do the dishes. Every night I wash the dishes. Both are okay. You might also hear the word with laundry. You might hear the verb do. Every day I do laundry. Or maybe on the weekend I do my laundry. So again, laundry is a type of housework. And again, we use the verb do with laundry. Now this is different from the verb make. A lot of the times in different people's languages, make and do are actually the same word. But in English, some activities use the word do and some activities use the word make. So here's an example of something we do in the house where we use the verb make, and that is make dinner. You can also say cook dinner, but we often say make dinner. You might ask somebody, what are you making for dinner tonight? Or maybe you might say, every night I make dinner. I make lunch. I make breakfast. So whenever you're talking about meals, we often use the verb make. Another thing that we make in English is our bed. So one of the first things I do when I wake up is I get out of bed and then I make my bed. What does it mean to make the bed? Well, it means that I pull the blankets up, I put my pillows in the proper place, and I make my bed look nice. So I make the bed. When I was a child, I always had to make my bed. Otherwise, my mother would get very angry. So this is a verb we often use with bed, make the bed. And again, this is a type of housework. So the last expression we're going to talk about today is the word chores. Chores might be a new word for you, or you might have heard it before. Chores is similar to housework. A chore is something you have to do. You don't have a choice, you have to do it. So we often use the verb do with the word chores, and there's different types of chores. One chore might be washing the dishes. Another chore might be vacuuming the house, or maybe feeding the cat. These are all examples of chores. So they're not fun activities. A chore is something you have to do. So somebody asked me the other day, what's the difference between housework and chores? Because they seem like very similar words, and they are. One of the main differences is we usually use the word chores when we're talking about children. So usually when an adult tells a child, you need to wash the dishes, we say that is the child's chore. So usually the housework children do are their chores. When I was a kid, I had different chores I had to do. I had to feed the cat. I had to sometimes do dishes. So these were the chores I had to do. I didn't want to do chores. I wanted to be outside playing with my friends. But as a child, sometimes I had to do chores. So we've covered a lot of different vocabulary related to housework. Again, one of the main things I want you to remember is housework and homework are very different things. There are different types of housework, like doing the dishes, doing the laundry, making dinner. These are all examples of housework. Another thing is I want you to really pay attention to what verbs we use when we talk about housework. Do we use do, or do we use make, or maybe we use something else? So these are all very important points. And the reason this is an important topic is because we talk about housework all the time. It's something we do every day. So as a result, we often use this type of English in our daily conversations. So I would like to invite you to check out our website at www.engvid.com. There you can actually practice everything you learned today by taking our quiz. It's a great way to help you remember what you learned. You can also subscribe to my YouTube channel. There you will find a lot of other different resources on learning English, including resources on slang, expressions, vocabulary, spelling, writing, reading, and so much more. So thank you so much for watching, and until next time, take care.